Let's go to our panel, David Gazzard and Ben Oquist. David, such traumatic and tragic scenes out of Kabul at the moment, 20 years on, and the Taliban back in power. It's just, it's hard to fathom. And you know, we asked this question, was it all worth it?
The question most people seem to be asking, I suppose it's a legitimate one. I cast my mind back to the attacks on the US that sort of led to this with the fall of the World Trade Centers, probably one of the most significant things that I've witnessed in my lifetime. And Allied forces have been in there since then, attempting to build a society and structure change that would be consistent with our way of life, but with the withdrawal and the immediate filling of the vacuum by the Taliban, it's hard to see where that's all going.
Ben Oquist, and the tragedy, it's, you know, there are many layers to it. The one that really I think is so awful is those gains that have been made for girls to go to school, for women to study at university, thousands of them. There's not a lot of confidence that any of that will be sustained under the Taliban.
No, and it's a full-scale humanitarian crisis, and it requires a full-scale humanitarian response. Unfortunately, we're not seeing that, particularly from the Australian government. I thought the Prime Minister's press conference today was pretty awful. I don't think it rose to the occasion or showed leadership. In fact, kind of actually put down the idea that we'd help a whole lot more Afghanis, certainly put down the idea of applying permanent protection to those Afghan refugees that are here. Obviously, he said they wouldn't be sent back immediately, but whatever that threat hangs over them, they can't get on with their lives here. And it's a simple thing Australian government could do would be provide permanent protection visas. But there should be a full-scale humanitarian response. We should be looking to examples being set by UK and Canada, or indeed former Prime Minister Malcolm Fraser, or indeed former Prime Minister Tony Abbott, and we took the Syrians in, or John Howard and the Kosovars, or Bob Hawke after Tiananmen Square. We didn't see that from the Prime Minister this week, and I think that's a shame. I think Australians want more and expect more after what has to be marked down as pretty colossal foreign policy failure over the last 20 years. One of the great neocon overreachers went into Afghanistan, yes, to pursue terrorism, but bin Laden was, you know, finally found in Pakistan 10 years later. We have to say that after all this time that the foreign military presence just exacerbated the instability and prolonged the violence and didn't help solve it. It is a great failure, and there's lots of lessons to learn from it. But now, humanitarian crisis, we can do more to be getting out those Australians who we have a duty of care to, who helped Australian soldiers, more on the humanitarian crisis and take in more refugees, and more the Afghanis who are here in Australia and provide permanent protection to. And there's some obvious policy solutions now while we figure out the long-term policy lessons of this massive strategic failure of US foreign policy, and unfortunately, therefore, Australia's.
David Gazzard, to another huge challenge facing not just this nation, but the whole world, and that is the ongoing pandemic, the Delta strain. Would you like to see children now prioritised in terms of the rollout? I know we await the ATAGI advice, but with Katie Gallagher's daughter testing positive, it seems a no-brainer that we have to get it now, the focus to kids, if you're going to send them back to school.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? The vaccination program will shortly be able to accommodate children. And of course, people who've watched this unfold over the last year and a half will recognise that, you know, when COVID first hit, children were not really particularly affected. But as the virus has mutated, it appears more and more that it's getting younger and younger people, which of course is a massive incentive in the first instance for everyone to get vaccinated. Families, anyone who's displaying hesitation needs to vaccinate, because the virus is looking like it's not discriminating down the age spectrum. The good news is that more and more people are getting vaccinated at accelerated rates. We're getting 200 vaccinations a minute. I think it's closing in on 300,000 vaccinations a day. And of course, supply is coming on now increasing doses with Pfizer that will afford the opportunity to have children vaccinated where it's safe to do so.
Ben, I don't think that enough or more than enough urgency could be focused on this. It's such a priority, particularly when we have focused so much to the older cohorts and vulnerable. I get that, but now surely the kids have to be the focus, given Delta is something that is transmissible and affects children. There's another teenager in the ICU in Sydney.
Yeah, of course. We need a faster vaccine rollout. We need to tackle misinformation about hesitancy. We need more supply. We need vaccination clinics on the ground in communities where people can see them so they know how to get them. We need to have a plan for kids, and looking forward to a target advice that needs to be a higher priority. Katie Gallagher's story is devastating because it tells a larger story of what's at risk. So yes, vaccinations, of course, are our way out of this, but we're a little way off that, actually. We're still looking at a crisis in New South Wales that's out of control. Gladys Berejiklian has not done enough, as Andrew Connell has been reporting, to lock down harder, faster. Yes, she should have done it earlier, but there's still things that can be done now. There's still lessons to be learned from Victoria. Now, a lot of people have complained about the federation structure and the premiers are in charge. And of course, there's some downsides from that. The upsides is we can learn from each other. And I don't think enough has been learned from Victoria.
Yeah.
Yes, the Delta virus is different, but the lockdown lessons from Victoria aren't being learnt in New South Wales, and the caseload is skyrocketing. And vaccines aren't going to get us out of that immediately. And 633 cases and rising is a terrible situation. We need to do more to protect workers, to give them proper leave, proper entitlements.
Yes.
Stops the encouragement of people moving around. We've got to stay at home and need incentives to stay at home.
Ben Oquist, David Gazzard, gentlemen, thanks. See you next week.
Thank you.
And
20% get nothing. They're really unfair tax cuts.
People want to see much stronger action from the government when it comes to climate change.
It's no coincidence that we have a wages crisis in Australia.
Transitioning to net zero emissions, it doesn't seem like there's much room for gas.